What's up, guys, and welcome to the Isn't It Crazy podcast. I'm your host, Rudy Perez, and today I'm going to be doing a UFC 247 card breakdown. But before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to All Things Amare. It's a crafting business my girlfriend started, and over the weekend, she helped me make these great t-shirts. Now, the t-shirts aren't for sale just yet. Maybe down the road, I'll put them up for sale and see where it goes from there. But I encourage you guys to go check her out on Instagram. It's All Things Amare, and see how crafty she is. Okay, so UFC 247 card breakdown. The reason I love doing these MMA podcasts is because it forces me to watch fighters that I wouldn't otherwise. It also lets me stumble upon up-and-coming fighters. And in the UFC model, you could see it every single main card. You have John Jones, which is what is going to attract a lot of the fans. But they like to mix up-and-coming and guys you guys should be putting more attention towards too. So for the first fight, you got Derek Lewis versus Ilir Latifi, and I don't see Ilir Latifi winning this fight at all. I mean, he's a great wrestler, but if you've seen any of Derek Lewis's fights, you can see that when he's taken down, there's not much that guys can do to him other than try to submit him or try to ground and pound, and it's very hard when you're dealing with somebody that big. I mean, homeboy is huge, and he's very explosive off his back. What makes Derek Lewis very special is that he could carry knockout power from the first round to the fifth round, and there's guys that have knockout power but lose it once fatigue sets in. Not Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis has knockout power throughout the whole fight. If you look at the Volkan fight, Volkan was winning the whole fight up until 14 seconds left in the fight where Derek Lewis knocked him the fuck out. What concerns me about this fight for Latifi is that he does like to put pressure on his opponents and he likes to trade, but when he's trading, he's very chinny. He lets his guard down for a counter punch, and I see Derek Lewis capitalizing on that. So I see Derek Lewis knocking him out in the second round. Maybe when Latifi gets a little fatigued, he's going to get desperate and try to either shoot, which isn't a very good idea given Derek's size, or he's going to try to put pressure on him and he's going to get knocked out just because he lets his guard down every single time he does that. So I'm choosing my homeboy, Derek Lewis, to win the first fight. Now, the second fight is what I mean when you talk about fighters that you wouldn't watch otherwise. It's guys that are good but don't have a lot of following, and these guys are great. These guys are both brawlers, and you could expect that from the featherweight division. What makes the featherweight division so interesting is that they're small, and that makes them fast, but they're big enough that they could carry some serious knockout power. What I like about this fight is that Dan Egan, he likes to stand in the middle of the ring, trade shot for shot, and so does Mirsad Bertic. The edge in this fight goes to Dan Egan just because he's a very fast starter. A lot of his fights end between 1 or 2 minutes of the first round, so I don't see this going any different. I see Dan coming out strong, fast, and standing in the middle and trading shot for shot, where Bertic does like to brawl, but it takes him a little more time to get accustomed to timing and length, and he's more conservative with his shots. But I see Dan coming from the head. I don't see this lasting very long. So do not take a bathroom break. Do not blink. It's going to be a very fast fight, and I think Dan just has better technique. He's not afraid to stand in the middle of the ring, go shot for shot, and I just think that Dan's chin is a lot better than Bertic. So I'm picking Dan for the second fight. It's going to be a very exciting fight. It always is in the featherweight division. So do not blink. Do not go for a bathroom break. Now, the third fight in the card is Juan Adams versus Justin Toph. Now you can take a bathroom break. See, the UFC model likes to mix the new and the old, and these guys are brand new. One guy has a 1-0 record in the UFC. The other guy has a 5-2 record in the UFC. And Juan Adams last two fights weren't that great. They were fast. One was because he was fighting Greg Hardy, and Greg Hardy knocked him out. But the second fight Juan Adams had wasn't that great either. He went for a takedown and ended up wrapping himself around homeboy's leg, and then his opponent just kept punching him until the referee told him, like, you're not doing anything, I gotta call the fight. So not a very hot start for Juan Adams, and not a very hot start for Justin Toph too. But these guys are brand new. They're still learning what it feels like to be on the big stage. So whoever can adapt better and learn from his mistakes is going to win this fight. I think Justin Toph is going to win this fight just because he's better in the clinch. And I think now he's going to be more selective, more conservative because of his last fight. His last fight, he went balls out. And you could see there's potential in that clinch, and you could see there's potential in his fighting style. But maybe the moment was just too much for him, and he ended up getting knocked out. But I see him making the adjustments needed to win this fight against John Adams, who just seems like maybe the UFC stage is a little too much for him, and he gets caught like a deer in headlights. Maybe the moment's too much for him, and he just can't execute. So I'm going to choose Justin Toph to win the third fight. Now we get to the good part of the card. You got a killer in Valentina Shevchenko. She's got these crazy kicks versus Katlyn Chookagian. Now, as far as girl fights go, this one is very exciting just because watching each of their last fights, Valentina Shevchenko executed kicks perfectly. She was kicking Jessica Eye in the midsection 4 or 5 times. And when I mean she kicks, it's like she could break every rib you have. It's that insane of a kick. And those kicks are very dangerous. And that's exactly why she knocked Jessica Eye out. Eventually, she kicked her so hard that Jessica Eye had to cover those shots, put her hands down, and try to check Valentina Shevchenko's kicks to the midsection. And once Valentina saw that she was covering her midsection and lowering her guard, she kicked her in the head and knocked her out stiff. I mean, toes curled, no controversy, clean. And if you look at Katlyn Chookagian's last fight, her opponent used her kicks to chew up Katlyn's lead leg. And for the common fans, if you do that technique, once you take somebody's lead leg out, they lose a lot of power in their punches just because they can't put a lot of weight to follow through with the punch. And I could see Valentina Shevchenko copying Chookagian's last opponent's game plan and adding a little bit more of it. So Katlyn's going to be more conservative, understanding that Valentina has a lot of power in her legs, and Valentina's going to use the threat of her kicks to her advantage and just choose and pick her shots. But I do see this fight going the distance, and you're going to see Valentina win just from points and being able to pick and choose her shots. I think Katlyn Chookagian is going to be very conservative. She's not going to put a lot of pressure, and that's going to be her downfall. So I'm very confident with that pick. I think Valentina Shevchenko gets the job done. She's a very exciting fighter. She's got insane kicks. So do not miss that fight. Pay attention to what she does. And the moment you see her throw that first kick, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And now to the main event. Jon Jones versus Dominick Reyes. Part of me wants to root for Dominick Reyes just because of his story. You know, he tried out for the NFL, got cut. So he gave the fighting game a shot, and his athleticism, his power in his left hand has brought him a very long way. It got him a title shot, and part of me does want to root for him. And like, we all want to see the reigning champion take a fall, right? That sometimes we choose to watch Floyd Mayweather just because there's a chance that he might lose, or we might watch Conor because a lot of people do hate Conor, so they watch just to see him lose. And a lot of people are going to tune in because this kid does have a lot of power in that left hand. He's very athletic. He knows how to move around the ring, and he's no slouch on the ground too. But that being said, he only has 12 fights, and the fights that he's done are against Chris Weidman, who moved up from 185 to 205, and nothing about Dominick Reyes screams out special other than the left hand. There is a lot of power in his left hand. Now, that being said, there's no disrespect. I actually like the way Dominick Reyes fights. But if you look at Jon Jones' career, he's fought the best of the best. And in my opinion, his last fight against Thiago Silva was a more dangerous fight because Thiago probably hit harder than Dominick Reyes. I think Dominick Reyes should have fought Thiago, but that unbeaten record, 12-0, is what gave him this fight. It's his last two knockout fights that brought him to the dance. But when it comes to Jon knows how to. When it comes to Jon is like the Bill Belichick of the UFC. Whatever you do good, he can take away from you. And when he could take away the one thing that you're really good at, it's going to be a long night. You could see Corey Anderson had no answer for him. Thiago Silva with his power and his aggression. Jon Jones in that fight used his length and his timing and his ability to pick and choose his precise shots to pretty much nullify anything Thiago Silva could do. In my opinion, he definitely hits harder than Dominick Reyes. Dominick Reyes, some of his fights look very amateurish. And like I said, maybe down the road, I would have been more scared for Jon Jones. But I'm going to have to choose Jon Jones for the win. Just because he's more experienced. He's going to take away what Dominick Reyes is really good at. And at the end of the day, Jon Jones is the pound for pound best fighter in the UFC. And you do not get that title by being somebody that's nothing short of greatness. I think Jon Jones is hitting a very good stride. He's probably in the later part of his prime, but he's more focused. He doesn't have controversies. And for Jon, he already has the money. He already has the fame. I think he's going for legacy. And when you're fighting for legacy, it's a very good motivator. And Dominick is talking about something that hasn't happened ever. Nobody's ever knocked out Jon Jones. Nobody's actually ever beaten Jon Jones other than a couple questionable fights here and there, but his record is 25-1. So I see Jon Jones' experience being too much for Dominick Reyes. Hopefully Jon Jones could finish this fight maybe in a knockout. It opens a lot of doors in heavyweight for him, but we will see. So just to recap the UFC 247 card breakdown, I got Derek Lewis winning against Latifi. I got Dan Egan winning against Mirsad Vertic. I got Justin Toph winning against Juan Adams. I got Valentina Shevchenko beating Caitlin Chukagian. And I got Jon Jones beating Dominick Reyes. Now, if you guys disagree with something I said, please comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe. And shout out to everybody listening. Thank you. I love the support. And I know these podcasts are a little clunky, so give me time. I will get better at this because these podcasts are a lot of fun to do. So that's it. So enjoy the fights. Hopefully my picks are right. And I'll give my reaction next podcast. So see you then.